person, Hugo Munsterberg. Since we are starting with history, of course, I have to talk about the father of industrial and organizational psychology. So this is Hugo Munsterberg, who is known as the father of industrial psychology. He was actually, like we can say, a multifaceted personality. He was trained under Leipzig. He was basically a German psychologist, later shifted to US. He had made immense contributions in the area of applied psychology, forensic psychology, and also industrial psychology. And one of his most popular books is a book called Psychology and Industrial Efficiency, which was published way back in the 1910s. So you could see that almost 110 years back itself, this person called Munsterberg spoke something about to what extent the principles of psychology could be applied in the industrial setting. Here he is using the word industry because that was a time when work meant mostly factories. Work meant there was no service sector, it was only the manufacturing sector where factory workers used to go to factory for mass production and so on. So that was the context in which he applied this particular concept of psychology, which came out in the form of this book called Psychology and Industrial Efficiency. And in this book, he mostly spoke about three important concepts which has actually paved the way for all the rest of the progress that happened in the field of industrial psychology or organizational psychology. First one is how to find the best possible man. So in fact, it's a very common statement in human resource management. You talk to any HR managers, they will say their biggest challenge is to find the right person for the, can anyone fill? Right person for what job? Right job. Right person for the right job. Making sure that there is a fit between the individual and the job. So how to find the best possible man, that is step number one. After that, you have to ensure that that recruited person, whoever you have chosen for doing a particular work, he should be performing to the best of his capabilities, and how that can result in the best possible effect for the organization. These were the three generic issues that we tried to cover in this particular book. And I would say, even though these three principles might sound like very simple in nature, but they have very huge implications if you look at the entire concept of employee recruitment in whatever sector you are talking about. So I think you can all identify with this particular picture, right? This is what will happen if a wrong person ends up in a particular job. Somebody who wanted to become a chef, what if he is supposed to become a hairstylist, hairdresser? What will happen? I'm sure all of us would have come across people like this in our lives, right? In fact, I teach in a management school, which means my students have all joined for MBA degree. And MBA is generally considered to be a very fashionable course which people take even if they are not very keen on it. Somehow there is a general perception that MBA means it's a professional course and there is a huge demand for MBA in the industry in general. So it's very common for me to come across students who are excellent talent in fashion designing, but they end up doing MBA. And when I ask them why are you going for MBA, they would say, my parents compelled me. My parents told me fashion designing is something which you can pursue as a passion, not as a career or profession. So they end up doing MBA, and what that student is right now doing, she is working as a probationary officer in Federal Bank. So imagine the kind of work that she will be doing there. So this is a perfect example of not having the right person for the right job. So this was one of the first challenge which I would say industries all over the world face, how to find the right person for right job. And it actually started during the World War time. It was during First World War. So what was the time period of First World War? Yeah, 1914 to 1918, right? So that was the time period when actually psychological tests were used for the very first time to recruit people for army. That was the time when all on a sudden, till then, all the people were recruited only for working in factories. Like it could be steel manufacturing or mining or any form of factory. For the very first time, there was a huge demand for mass recruitment of human resources that happened during First World War when we had to in large numbers during World War time, and that was the very first time when psychology was applied, which was nothing but application of all your psychometric tests. Initially, for this particular World War I case, they developed two specific tests called Army Alpha and Army Beta test. And that was just the beginning. Over the period of time, right now, a variety of psychometric tests are used by organizations all over the world as part of their recruitment process. For example, MBTI, I'm sure all of you are familiar with it too. So MBTI is a very widely used psychometric tool that is used in the recruitment. And it started with army, and even now in the armed forces, those of you who have gone for the PSSB recruitment might be familiar. The entire process involves administration of a battery of psychological tests, a series of psychological tests as a part of the recruitment process, which is nothing but finding the right person for the right job. So that was the history. I would say this was one of the very first application of psychology in the field of human resources or recruitment. Now, fast forward, this is something which is of a recent trend. Has anyone heard about this Dandelion principle? It was first published in MIT as part of some of the research done there. Dandelion. I hope you all know what is dandelion. Basically, dandelion. So this is a principle which is used by organizations nowadays. This concept emerged during 2013 when the organization SAP Lab, which is a very prominent global organization, they announced that their aim by 2020 is to have 1% of their workforce should consist of people from the autism spectrum disorder. That was the declaration made by SAP Labs in 2013. Now, why do you think all of a sudden SAP Labs made this declaration? Was it out of sympathy for these people from autism spectrum, or was it part of their CSR activity or social responsibility, diversity and inclusion? Actually, it was more for their own benefit than for anything else, because they realized that people belonging to the autism spectrum, they were found to have certain special abilities which make them more suitable for certain technological profiles. So they found that if they recruit people from autism spectrum for certain specific profiles in their organization, the output and the outcome will be much more effective than recruiting the so-called normal or the so-called majority of the prospective employees. So this principle is called Dandelion principle, because usually dandelion is considered to be weed, which is actually destroying the beauty of a natural garden. But even a dandelion can be presented in a very beautiful manner, and it has its own beauty. Similar way, even people who are minority in nature, people who have specific capabilities, they are also needed in the organization. So earlier in the first case which I discussed,